The invasion of Ukraine by Russia would come at great cost to most of our countries. Already, oil prices have gone beyond $100. Inflation in most of our countries have begun to rise. Investment decisions are being pulled back. The already difficult situation of economic stagnation triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic is beginning to worsen. The consequences of these adverse developments is that the fragility of most of our countries will deepen and further risk created for global stability. The actions that have taken place against Ukraine are therefore far-reaching and require even greater solidarity. First, with the people of Ukraine who bear the direct and immediate impact of this unjustified action that violates the Charter and the principles of international law, but also for the many, especially developing countries, whose populations are facing severe austerity. May we find the wisdom and common purpose to overcome the difficult moment we face. Ours is the call for peace. Let's give peace still yet a chance. I thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Let's continue on with the war.
Mr. President, Brazil regrets that the Security Council was unable to react to a breach of international peace and security that is still happening as we speak. During the negotiations, Brazil favored a text that could maintain space for dialogue among all the parties, while sending a decisive message for respect to international law and to the basic principles that for more than 75 years have saved us. Council was unable to react to a breach of
It appears that
peace and
he's going to be speaking at the White
that is
House
still
again.
happening as we speak. During the
Bottom
negotiations, Brazil favored a text that could maintain space for dialogue among all the parties, while sending a decisive message for respect to international law and to the basic principles that for more than 75 years have saved us from a war of wide proportions. We thank the proponents for their flexibility in several aspects of the draft during the negotiations. Mr. President, the framing of the use of force against Ukraine as an act of aggression in the draft, a precedent that has seldom been used in this Council, signals to the world the gravity of the situation, but could also downplay other times when force was used against the territorial integrity of member states with no equivalent reaction from the Council. Indeed, we could have ended up with a text that is more conducive to reconciliation. Brazil has fought for that. However, under the current circumstances, not even a different text would have been enough to allow the Council to fulfill its responsibility to maintain international peace and security today. No country, elected or non-elected, with or without veto power, should be able to use force against the territorial integrity of another state with no Council reaction. The Council's paralysis, when world peace is at stake, could lead to its irrelevance when we need it most.
All right, chat. I'm going to mute myself so y'all can listen.
It is our collective responsibility not to allow this to happen. I thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. President. The serious developments in Ukraine, we all agree, undermine regional and international peace and security. And throughout this crisis, my country has consistently called for de-escalation and dialogue. We placed great hope in the various diplomatic initiatives and channels aimed at resolving the crisis. And those calls reflected our alarm at the consequences of this crisis for civilians present in Ukraine, as well as for the region and for the international community. And we emphasize the importance of ensuring that humanitarian assistance reaches those in need and call on all parties to respect international humanitarian law, prioritize the protection of civilians, and allow for the unhindered delivery of humanitarian assistance. We further believe that every member state of the United Nations has the right to security, sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. Being from the Middle East, we are intimately aware of the critical importance of a stable regional security environment, and of de-escalation, diplomacy, and dialogue as the basis for that security. Similarly, we understand from experience and share the need for inclusive and consultative processes. We support the draft resolution's emphasis on the need to adhere to the principles of international law and to the Charter of the United Nations. And that must be the basis of the resumption of that resolution has not been adopted. The UAE restates its commitment to the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of all member states of the United Nations. We urge for immediate de-escalation and cessation of hostilities, and we once more underscore our readiness to work with members of this Council towards that goal. The results of this vote were a foregone conclusion, but the avenues for dialogue and diplomacy must remain open more urgently than ever before, and we must pursue them together. This is the clear sentiment that this Council is united on. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of Kenya.
Mr. President, Kenya has voted in favor of the draft resolution to affirm Article 2 of the United Nations Charter that all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. We voted yes to register our opposition to the breaching of the territorial integrity of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. We voted with hearts that are heavy with sympathy for the people of Ukraine. We offer our condolences to all the Ukrainian families that have suffered the devastating loss of loved ones to this unnecessary war. Our affirmative vote today transcends the tragedy unfolding in Ukraine. We voted yes, also having in mind the justifications for past interventions by other powerful states, using resolutions from this very Council that seriously compromised international peace and security. Even as deserved condemnations ring out today about the breach of Ukraine's sovereignty, history's condemnations are allowed silence in this room. We cannot help but recall that Africa's Sahel region is in terrible turmoil due to the hasty and ill-considered intervention in Libya a decade ago. On that occasion, the African Union sought more time for diplomacy. Its counsel was ignored, and what resulted was not peace or the safety and security of the Libyan people. Instead, terror was unleashed on African peoples in the countries to the south of Libya. There have been yet other actions of similar magnitude that have brought us to this unfortunate pass. Today, the precious fabric of our charter lies torn and trampled and threatened with further harm if there is no urgent and visionary leadership with a faith in diplomacy pushing in the opposite direction. If the United Nations Charter could speak for itself, it would vote for this resolution to affirm its central role in safeguarding our collective peace. It would remind all members of the Security Council and the United Nations that the Charter contains the tools for the pacific settlement of their disputes by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, resort to regional agencies or arrangements, or other peaceful means of their own choice. By failing to adopt this resolution, we deeply regret that the Security Council has failed to stop the infringement of the sovereignty of a member of the United Nations. I thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, China is deeply concerned about the latest developments of the situation in Ukraine. Now it has come to such a point which we do not want to see. China always forms its own position on the basis of the merits of the matter at hand. We believe that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states should be respected and that the purposes and principles of the UN Charter should be jointly upheld. We have always called on all parties to seek reasonable solutions to address each other's concerns through peaceful means on the basis of equality and mutual benefit. We welcome and encourage all efforts for a diplomatic solution, and we support the Russian Federation and Ukraine in resolving the issue through negotiations. In the past week, the Security Council has held 2 emergency meetings, and all parties have fully elaborated on their positions and concerns on the current situation. At present, faced with a highly complex and sensitive situation, the Security Council should make a necessary response. At the same time, such a response should also be taken with great caution. All actions should be truly conducive to diffusing the crisis, rather than adding fuel to fire. If not handled properly and treated by bending oneself on exerting pressure and imposing sanctions, it may only lead to more casualties, more property loss, a more complicated and chaotic situation, and more difficulties in bridging differences. It may completely shut the door to a peaceful solution, and eventually, it is the vast number of innocent people that will be the victims. We must draw profound lessons from the extremely painful experience in the past. Based on the above mentioned, China abstained in the vote just now. I wish to stress that the issue of Ukraine is not something that only emerged today, nor did the current situation occur suddenly, overnight. It is the result of the interplay of various factors over a long period of time. China advocates a common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security concept, believing, as it does, that the security of one country cannot come at the cost of undermining the security of other nations, and that much less can regional security be secured